What is the role of religion in our ever-changing world? From the NewsChannel 5 network, this is Issues of Faith.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Issues of Faith. I am glad you are with us. We are in the middle of the political season, and so we are going to dive into some political talk, which can be very divisive in these times, on this episode. And we're going to talk about white evangelical Christians, how they support the president and how they feel about the president, and that they often support the president in larger numbers than many other religious groups. Happy to have with us Pastor Kevin Shrum, who is with Inglewood Baptist Church, of course, joining us via Zoom, as all of our guests do now. Pastor Shrum, thank you for being with us.
Hey, good to be here. Ben, I'm just so sad that I can't be literally in your presence, but this will suffice.
This will have to suffice. And you've been on before, and I've interviewed you before for your perspective from the evangelical Christian point of view. And I appreciate you coming on and talking about this. And so, as I said, there's an article here, Pew Research, that says white evangelical Christians have mixed views on the president, but remain a core constituency. They back him at higher rates than at any other religious group. And so my question to you, do you feel like that's true? And how are white evangelicals conflicted about the president and some of his moral issues? Or kind of where do you feel like they're coming from right now?
Well, that's a great question. And the evangelical community is generally divided. You have basically three categories of people. You have the never Trumpers. That's a group of people that are really purist in the sense that they could not bring themselves to vote for somebody that has kind of the moral background that Trump has. On the other hand, you have another group that they're drinking the Kool-Aid. I mean, they're like coming shy of murder, they would support Trump. Ben, I think most evangelicals, and this is not just true for whites, I think this is true for a growing number in the black community, in the Hispanic community, is that they're voting on issues. It's not so much about the person. I guess there was a time where Christians would attach to a person, but many of us, like me, gave that up years ago, and now we're more issue voters. There's 4 or 5 things that are important to us, and that's why there's a third category of people who I suppose would support Trump. They're not always happy about his behavior, and they're not always happy about his tweets, but left to the alternative, they're not. They don't really have any place to go, and so I think that's really where we are, and so I would say that's where the vast majority of the people. And again, you've got people on either extreme. They're either totally against Trump or they're totally for him. But I think most evangelical Bible-believing Christians, you might say, are pretty circumspect. They're more logical. They're more thoughtful than most people give them credit for, and I think that's kind of where a lot of them are.
So Christianity Today, back in 2019 in December, they wrote a large editorial saying that he should be impeached. The president should be impeached based on his moral character. They said it's time to say what we said 20 years ago, talking about President Clinton, when a president's character was revealed for what it was. And they said back in 1988 or 1998 about President Clinton that his conduct had rendered this administration unable to lead. And so here, and then the argument that they make in that article, which I know you've read, is that none of the president's positives can balance the moral and political danger we face under a leader of such grossly immoral character. That's what they're saying about President Trump.
Right.
And yes, and so under Bill Clinton, there was a lot of focus on the failings of Bill Clinton as a person, and those failings render him unable to lead. And if you apply those same things to President Trump, it would seem it would render him unable to lead. And then that opens the door for an accusation of hypocrisy on the part of evangelicals. What do you say about that?
And I totally get that. First of all, Christianity Today is no longer the flagship magazine for the evangelical movement. There may have been one time that it was, just like the Christian Century magazine is the flagship for the liberal mainline churches. I would say a lot of us, there were a lot of people that didn't necessarily agree with Clinton, but didn't want him to be impeached. And we could get into that. That's a long history there. One of the things I would say that's changed, Ben, is what's changed is the political landscape. There was a time when there was some kind of a center you could get to with your political opponent, if you will. There was a kind of a neutral public square. That is totally gone. And so a lot of evangelicals that I talk to are not always happy with Trump, and they feel like, as far as the issues go, he may be the closest thing they've got to a representation, albeit a defective one, but some kind of a representation. And so I would say, since that article has been written, things have even ramped up even more, and there always is a taint of hypocrisy. But I will tell you a conversation I had with somebody who kind of chastised me. And again, I'm in the group. I'm not a Kool-Aid drinker. I know Trump's faults, nor am I a never Trumper. I'm more a little bit measured and circumspect. But I asked this person, I said, now, when all of a sudden did evangelicals get this, when it comes to politics, moral purity? We're not electing a pastor. We're not electing a Sunday school teacher. Now, we do want our leaders to have a moral compass. But I gave a litany of all the politicians that evangelicals have supported. I think I started in the late 50s and bringing it up to the present. And this person looked at me like, well, I hadn't really thought about that. So politics is not a pure business. And sad to say, a lot of really good people, Ben, that I would probably be more, rah-rah about. A lot of really good people don't want to run. They don't want to put themselves out there about what you have to go through in order to get in office. So a lot of times what we're left with is options that people are not always happy about. But when it comes to politics, you've got to make a choice. We're basically a two-party system. And so that's where I think a lot of evangelicals are coming from.
In this article, it says, if we don't reverse course now, will anyone take anything we say about justice and righteousness with any serious for decades to come? And I guess that gets back to the hypocritical thing, but it's also getting at young people. And as they see, faith leaders saying, this is our guy, he can do no wrong, and yet he has these moral failings, and he has this Twitter feed and the things that we're all aware of, does it turn them off to the church? Is it a short-term gain on some of these issues that are very important to evangelicals, abortion and some other things, and a long-term loss?
Well, I'm not one of those who always connects the two. Young people and the rise of the nuns, and that's N-O-N-E-S, not nuns with a habit, but nuns who were declaring either no affiliation, that was on the rise before Trump ever became president. And so I don't always connect the two. It also comes with the assumption, Ben, and I know this may be the sharpest thing I say, but to the never Trumpers, to the people who drink Kool-Aid, Trump's the greatest thing, he's King Cyrus that's going to save us. I always tell those people, now look, this is politics. He's a person. He's flawed. He has feet of clay. Be careful that you don't go so far to deify him. To the people who are never Trumpers, what I tell them is, I say, are you sure that we're at a place in the world where some of the fringe people even want to listen to us? you're acting as if that if we take a stand, they're gonna want to listen to us finally. So, for example, if I take a moral stand on abortion, I just want to tell you, there's a lot of people who will not listen to me, even though I'm trying to be reasonable, I'm trying to be rational, I want to have a rational conversation, but they're not in the mood to even have a conversation. And so I don't know that always affects, and there's a direct correlation between the two. I know that's a red herring, because I think the disinterest in the church has been going on for 20, 25 years, and we're just now seeing it in great manifestation. And I think that leads me to say that in the evangelical church, we have some house cleaning to do. We have some things that we need to get right within our own house in many ways. But so I don't always connect the two. I know people say, well, if you vote for a guy like Trump, you're a hypocrite, because other times you didn't vote for Clinton or whatever. But like I say, Ben, I do think the terrain has changed, even exponentially, even in the last 24 months. It's amazing to me how fast things have changed. And it's also because you don't have a whole lot of options. And personally, I don't see a Biden-Harris, agenda being healthy for the nation. But that's just my personal conviction. But
so then for you, it's about the issues, right? I guess for you, there's certain issues that you're not going to change on. And yet for somebody who's, a young person who's looking and they see President Trump screaming and tweeting and doing some of the things he's doing, they say, how can Christians be on the side of this guy? And your answer would be, well, there's some issues. This guy is flawed, really flawed if you take a moral code of things, but it's the issues. Yeah. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
And what I would say, Ben, is I would say they have to go through the same cycle that I had to go through. I remember early on in my whatever political involvement or interest I had, I was always, it's about the man, it's about the woman, it's about the person. I'm rah-rah. And I think as you age and as you get more experience under your belt, politics is politics. I don't know that there's any clean and pure people by the time they get to that point. They owe their soul to the company store, as the old Tennessee Ernie Ford song would say. And so what you're left with is you're left with your convictions about certain various issues about freedom, faith, family, the economy, those basic core things. And you do the best you can based upon the choices that you have. So for me, the rose is the bloom is off that rose years ago. And there's a whole story behind that. I got burned by some politicians and so on. And so I'm still a convictional Christian, but I'm a little bit more circumspect. I'm a little bit more weary about the person. I'll look at their policies. I'll look at the overall, trajectory. With Trump, there's a lot you have to wade through. What's interesting about Trump is, for all his bluster and the tweets, and if that's all you focus on, he is trouble. But then when you look at the things he's actually done, it's a pretty interesting thing. You may not agree with everything that he's done, but I tell you, I had an epiphany when I was trying to figure Trump out. I was out at the Hermitage, and I'll tell you this story. It was 2016. My wife and I had one of those Saturdays where we didn't have a whole lot to do. So we thought, we haven't been to the Hermitage. So we're going through the Hermitage, and we like to read. We didn't have kids in tow. So we're reading every little box. And right through the tour, Ben, it dawned on me, Trump is Andrew Jackson. Now Andrew Jackson was a wild card. I mean,
And Trump likes Andrew Jackson. He talks about Andrew Jackson.
In fact, it was one of his first visits. But you know, when they had the inauguration, they like to burn the White House down. You know, what he did with the Indians.
My final question on this, and then we'll move on, would be: does this mean that evangelicals, that Christians, are kind of ceding this ground of, well, their leaders need to have moral character, and can evangelicals attack any sort of leader in the future for any sort of personal failing, or are you saying that's off the table?
No, it's not off the table. I'm just saying that when it comes to politics, I think the day, and maybe there never was a day. Now we know more about our politicians. I mean, for example, what have we come to find out about JFK? I mean, good grief. I mean, you know, we have state troopers slipping in women in the back of the White House. What do we know about Lyndon Johnson? What do we know about Nixon? What do we know even at the end of Reagan's? And I liked Reagan, but even at the end of Reagan's term, you know, he got sidetracked with the Iran-Contra affair. I guess what I'm saying, Ben, is the day, if there ever was a day where you vote for the person, at least for me, that is long gone. I mean, yes, I would love to have a politician who is, you know, morally upright. I pray for that. I want that. But it's politics. It's the sad story of politics. And what I've had to do in the last 15 years, especially 15, 20 years, is to really get a set of issues that are really important to me. And that's kind of how I move forward.
Pastor Shrum, thank you. All right, we're going to take a break. Then I'm going to come back and ask what's happening at your church with COVID. So we'll take a break. Be back right after this.